Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. Just 2 days to go for the start of Rio Games, and it's the perfect moment for us to get a balance on what we achieve, what we didn't achieve, what were the challenges, the learnings, and the next steps. So our time is very short. I'll try to be as comprehensive as I can. Starting with economic sustainability, that's a very important part of Rio Games. The reorganizing committee works with 100% of private funds, and we've been on track on our journey to ensure that we have a balanced budget, but also on everything that is responsibility of the governments. Rio has been unprecedented on the level of use of private funds. So from all the past games, Rio really has found some wise ways to mobilize a lot of private funds for the work that needs to be done related directly and indirectly with the games. Just an example, for each real that was spent in building and renovating sport venues, 5 reais were spent in infrastructure and legacy projects. So this is an important indicator, and approximately 60% of this came from private sources. That is also a first for the games. Another important part is the Snow White Elephants target that was based on 2 main strategies. The first is a very large reuse of existing sport venues that were built both for the Pan American Games in 2007 and for the military games in 2011. If we did a calculation looking at the area of the venue competitions, the sport competitions, and 71% of the area are of existing venues that didn't need to be built. So it's an impact that was avoided both financially and environmentally. And the second strategy is the concept of the nomadic architecture. How you can move a step ahead in the trend that has also been observed in previous games of having temporary venues when we don't have a strong legacy case, but now to build some flexibility on the post-games use, as is the case of the handball arena, that have been designed from the beginning to be dismantled and then be transformed in 4 schools for the city of Rio. Another highlight of our program is the carbon program and legacy. This is the most comprehensive carbon program in Olympic story. Carbon emissions are the #1 global environmental risk, and therefore it was one of our priorities. We are living a transforming low-carbon solutions for the economy of Brazil and other countries in Latin America, and how it works. First, we set a very bold target to get 2 million tons of carbon emissions reductions, all done with innovative solutions and technologies in economic sectors that are key to emissions in Brazil and Latin America. All of this with third-party verification and assurance, and addressing barriers to implementation, either technological barriers, financial barriers, or mindset barriers. One of the examples of those projects, 2 examples that for me are the most telling, is a work to the restoration of pasture. So it's a large work in Mato Grosso with cattle farms to restore pasture and bring a more sustainable way to the Brazilian cattle industry. That is one of the major contributions of emissions in this country. So it's to change, help accelerate the transition towards a low-carbon economy. And as well, there is another very interesting project that's part of this program on packaging, how to get light and eco-efficient packaging with new technology that's being implemented not only in Brazil but also in Mexico, Colombia, and Argentina. From the side of our own operations, we also took a bold target to reducing 20% the emissions that are direct responsibility of the organizing country. That in the first estimate we did, it was around 724,000 tons of carbon equivalent. The last estimate, with our effort to reduction, we are in 580,000, and there is more to be confirmed when we look at the Rio emissions from the games that we will only be able to calculate at the end of the year, but we are on track with the target we have set ourselves. And last but not least, it's very important that a commitment has been made to balance the spectator emissions. So these 2 million tons are being used to balance our operations from Rio 2016, but also to address a very substantial part of the spectators' emissions, what is new in this scale. So the highlight here is for the golf course, with 44 hectares of mangrove and sand species restored, in spite of all the initial fears and criticisms of the project. We had the confirmation from judicial experts that there were a very significant environmental benefits and biodiversity gains from this project. The project also has recently received an international award from the Golf Digest Green Award, plus the GEO certification, that is the certification of the Golf Environmental Organization. Also in the Olympic Park, there was 7.3 hectares of mangrove restored, and the work we are doing on management of both wild and domestic animals. We are taking care for stray dogs and cats with shelter and adoption program, and promoting an harmonious relationship between the sport competitions and the wildlife that we have present in so many of our venues. So people will see golfers close to many wild animals, and it's an opportunity for people to know the rich biodiversity. Another important point is the socio-economic legacies that we created with communities and people who would otherwise not benefit from the games, like the work on sustainable tourism and catalyzing the work with low-income communities and selected favelas. It's a program called Favelidade that was catalyzed by the games, to include local groups of women in our supply chain, training opportunities for youth people in many communities in Rio as network technicians, and as well to work in the retail sector, and also the first time work on child protection in partnership with UNICEF and Childhood, and a project that is small but I love from the depth of my heart. There was the inclusion of 50 volunteers with Down syndrome in the games, with a lot of psychological support and creating a methodology on how to welcome them to this type of events. Time is finishing, but I would just try to wrap up. Some scale up that we managed to do on sustainable products, services and materials. The metals, for example, that we have 30% of precious recycled metals and mercury-free gold. That's important not only for the environment but for health as well. 70 tons of certified sustainable fish, working together with the Marine Stewardship Council and the Agriculture Stewardship Council in a country that didn't have one single fishery certified when we started the work 3 years ago. Zero deforestation beef guaranteed for all the food that's being served by the games. 100% of certified wooden furnitures, creating a transformation for small and middle-sized companies in the furniture sector, and 20% of biodiesel in the buses in our fleet, and as well for all the power generators have the 20% of biodiesel. Just to end, Last but not least, the work in transportation and mobility with the new BRT lines that connect many areas of low income in Rio, such as Deodoro, Ricardo de Barros, Tanque, Santa Cruz, Penha. It's not just Barra, so we will need to look to where the BRT passes to understand the impact. And the things we didn't do. We did not solve historic, environmental and social passives of the city. But being honest with you, no event would have done it. But we successfully managed to bring this up in the social and political agenda of Rio, giving visibility and bringing to debate. I think 2 points important here. First is the Guanabara Bay. The issues were not solved because they are not just a local issue in Rio. It has to do with the lack of priority that has been given to basic sanitation in this country. So the tragedy of Guanabara Bay is the same tragedy of the Tietê River in São Paulo, of many of our metropolis, and what the Olympic Games has achieved that previous events that been held in Rio did not. We had Echo 92, we had Rio plus 20, but the scale of visibility that has been given to the problem of basic sanitation and water pollution in Rio that the Olympics has achieved was a first. The other events, other previous events, didn't give that much visibility. And the second issue is, of course, the issue of urban violence. That is not a cause, was not caused by the Games and was not solved by the Games, but once again, the Games has contributed to bring light to the issues so there can be more debate in society. I know I passed my time, but I just ask one extra minute to talk about the challenges. We had many challenges in our journey, but I would just like to highlight 3 that can be important for the debates and for future events. First one is on governance. The governance of a mega sport event, it's very complex. Everything we do, we have to deal with 3 levels of governance. We are a temporary organization, non-for-profit, but we need to cooperate with 3 levels of government all the time, and it can become quite complex. But also we collaborate with international bodies such as the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, the International Paralympic Committee, over 23 international federations for the different sports that make the decisions about their own competitions, 206 Olympic national committees, and 169 national Paralympic committees. And everything needs to be agreed with everyone. So Olympic Games is much like a network type of organizations, and everything has to be debated, and there is partnership, and the governance sometimes, to be honest with you, it's a nightmare. How we get everyone on the table to agree, to make decisions and to get things done. So we had challenge with governance, to be fully honest with you, and this is something I think we need to pay more attention, how to make this governance work. The second is the debate on causality. So a lot has been attributed to games, but what is really the causality of the games? What is responsibility of the event, and what are processes that already exist in the society or the economy? What is the causality, for example, in everything we see in Rio today? What is the role of the games, and what is the role of the economy of oil? And all the challenge that has been with Petrobras and this sector that is really present in the city of Rio. So this is a major challenge, to attribute causality and to understand the role of each element in this complex equation. And the third one is this difficult to navigate between control, influence, and what we can do, what we cannot do, what can an organizer of an event, how far we can go, and the importance of the partnerships. So I think a conclusion is no one can deliver an event such as this alone. So partnerships, with the governments, with NGOs, with international organizations, with different stakeholders has been key. So I would say that in everything we achieved, 70% of this has been due to partnerships, especially the work we managed to do with NGOs and international organizations and opinion makers here in Brazil, in Rio, and internationally. So it's no way to advance in sustainability of events if we don't open for those partnerships or acknowledge their importance and promote this way of working together. Thank you.